Hello everyone, this is Endgame Arts with another boxing of the offline product game review. This is Shadowrun Trilogy for the PlayStation 4, but being played and tested on my PlayStation 5. To jump right into it, this physical copy here comes with 3 games on one disc. Now each game is treated as its own individual piece, so you get to pick and choose which one you want to install. This is nice in case you're only interested in playing one of the 3 games, or you're working with very limited hard drive space on your console. Now, I do also want to point out that this physical copy is from Limited Run Games, so getting a copy will not be the easiest in the future. Now, each game, as I said, is treated as its own individual piece, but each game has the exact same update version on disc. And that update version is 1.03, and I'm happy to say at the time making this video, all 3 games did not have an update available. Now, like always, I play all my games completely offline with an unregistered account, and I cannot say my experience was flawless. Basically, near the end is when the game really started falling apart during Shadowrun Hong Kong, but all of them I did experience some minor hiccups and issues. Now, in case you are confused, since they're not going by number, they all have their own individual title name. Now, each game is its own piece, so you do not actually have to play any of the other games in order to get the experience. Now, granted, later on games, they do have some reference to prior games, but by no means are you required to play like 1, 2, and 3. But if you are curious of how to play the games when they first release or which one to start with first, Shadowrun Returns is the first release, Shadowrun Dragonfall is the second release, and Shadowrun Hong Kong is the third release. Now, Shadowrun Returns and Shadowrun Dragonfall are pretty much identical in the overall gameplay aspects experience, so they're not really that different. The Returns is like the first prototype, if you will, the idea. Dragonfall is where they really expanded the game and got more, money and influence to be able to put more into it. Now, Shadowrun Hong Kong, they do address some minor hiccups and problems that the previous 2 games had, but also changing a certain core mechanic of the game, and that is jacking, which is like a hacking where you get to do computer hacking, which is vastly different from the first 2 releases. This could be good and bad depending on the individual. But I do want this video to be too long because we do have a lot to go over. Now, as I said, I did experience quite a significant problems, but I did manage to beat all 3 games completely offline with an unregistered account. Now, all these problems consist pretty much throughout all 3 of them, but some of them have them selective problems that I only experienced with those games, and I'll try to point that out as I go through this list. But just keep that in mind, all 3 of them had problems. First up, this goes with all of them, small text. If you're someone who sits pretty far away from your TV or your monitor, the text can be pretty small, especially in certain dialogue moments and text moments. This could be a problem for some or not a big deal for others. I just want to point that out. If you have maybe bad eyesight or you sit pretty far away from your screen, the text can be pretty small at certain moments of the game. Also, keep in mind that loading times can be a little hit and miss on terms of length. It took quite sometimes loading, and sometimes it was pretty quick. But every time it gets done loading, you need to make sure to hit the X button to proceed. This does get a little repetitive to have to constantly hit the X button, but I understand why they kind of include it so you can be prepared. But there's a few times where loading time would just be sitting there for quite a while, and it looks like the whole game just froze up during loading. Now, majority of the time, it didn't freeze up. After waiting maybe a good little while, and I mean a good while, it finally started loading up. But sadly, there is issues of it actually freezing. Or maybe I just didn't wait long enough. But I've already waited long enough. It was actually quicker just to close out the application and reboot it back up than keep waiting for that load time. So there was actual freeze up during loading. But do keep that in mind, that there was a few times where it is loading and it just kind of hangs up for a little bit, and then it will eventually finish the loading. AI enemy movements and stuff like that can be pretty funny. I didn't really notice it too much in Shadowrun Returns, but when I got to Shadowrun Dragonfall and Shadowrun Hong Kong, the AI movement and stuff like that started to get really funny, because there's a few times they would run and then run back to where they were, then run to a new area and then run back to where they were. and not attack at all, even though they were like at a perfect opportunity to attack. So there is some little hiccups on the overall pathing and AI interaction. I won't say they're completely brain dead, but there are certain moments where you can tell the AI isn't sure what to do because you're maybe surrounding them and they don't know where to move without being at risk. So the AI kind of gets like in a loop, so they kind of keep moving in these positions because as long as you're playing strategically and smart, you can overwhelm AI pretty quickly. Next one is you can't respec in the game. Now, do keep that in mind. The game does try to let you know this, but I just want to make that sure in the video. Throughout all 3 games, once you confirm your abilities, those are confirmed. You cannot change this or alter this in any way. So make sure you are for sure which ones you're going to pick and put into your skill tree. There was a few times I got stuck in the environment, like it was like a battle, and after the battle, I was right by a turret, and this turret, I guess, was not meant to be there in some way, so my character got stuck in that position. I couldn't move and run, and I got stuck in the little geometries and stuff like that around the map. Thankfully, it wasn't permanent stuck like that when I was talking about the turret, but it still gets annoying running around the environment. You get hung up on this little box or this light post or this little bitty clipping of the door. You can get stuck a lot on the environment quite significantly. As well as in the first game, there's a cult called the Brotherhood, and there's a point where you got to open up this door for your computer AI to come in. But every time I open up that door, it would change my character to one of my AI NPC partners. Now, this is not supposed to happen. You're not supposed to be able to control the other characters other than throughout combat. But as you're just running around freely, you cannot control the other characters. So the game kept bugging up and making me control an NPC. And why that was a problem is that this interfected the overall flow of the aspects of the game to get to a certain area. It's a very small moment. But I tried reloading my save, and it still kept having that issue. I had to reload my save quite significantly back. I'd say maybe a good 5 or 8 saves back, and then I went back into that area, and it fixed itself. So I highly, highly recommend, after all 3 of these games, you make sure you have like good 20 to 25 backup saves, and you keep recycling through those, because there's a lot of hiccups and bugs and oddities here and there that you want to make sure you can fall back on in case something didn't load up right. Now, I mentioned about the non-screen freezing. Then it actual freeze up. There's a few times after like I got done with a combat or something like that, or in the middle of combat, the game did freeze up. Of course, I mentioned about the load screen freezing up. Now, sadly, near the ending, and this only happened in Shadowrun Hong Kong, the game would always freeze up every time a new battle engaged. So I basically had to make sure I saved every single second I had chance. I had to after a combat and before combat, because every time I went into combat, I always played the rigger, which is somebody who has like robots you can control and stuff like that, like turrets and like drones and stuff. Every time I would control one drone, I would go back to my menu to control a second drone. Every new combat engagement, the game would freeze. Now, this only happened in Shadowrun Hong Kong, and it was only like really near the end of the game. And sadly enough, the Shadowrun Hong Kong Extended Edition has a second campaign. And I thought, well, maybe it was just my save file from that one. It was just having issues. But when I played the extended campaign in Hong Kong, the same problem persisted through that one as well. So I don't know what was going on with that. It's just every time I would go into combat and activate my second drone, it would always freeze up. One time. So once I reloaded and then go back into it, it wouldn't happen. But when I go into the next battle, it would freeze up. I would reload it and then go into that battle, and it wouldn't freeze up. It was really annoying, but eventually I got so used to it that I just constantly had so many backup saves and just in case that it really, really didn't affect too much. Sure, thankfully it was near the end of the game and not at the beginning. If it was the beginning, maybe even a different story. Next one is I was a hacker as well, so I was able to jack in and hack and do all this stuff. There was a few times that when I got done jacking and yeah, that doesn't sound really well, but I got done hacking and then I unjacked, and then my I guess keyboard or whatever they call it, it's floating in front of my character, so it's just like floating. It's supposed to be behind your back, but it was just floating in front of me. Not a big deal, but hey, that's more problems. I did come across a soft lock and Shadowrun Dragonfall, where you have a character who's a hacker and you got to do a special job for him, and he's supposed to like unlock these doors, but eventually I was able to solve stuff with the guy and still in the hack level layout, but since I solved stuff in a different way, the game couldn't get me out of hacking. And so the game was like a soft lock. I could still run around and move into these, I guess, matrix, if you call it, but I couldn't get out of it. I couldn't control my other characters because the game was expecting me to have a turn, but I was not in combat, so I couldn't go into combat to create turns. So I got soft lock. So just keep in mind, in the first and second one, there is a little finickiness with that. I think they try to address it significantly in the third game, Shadowrun Hong Kong, but in the two previous ones, Shadowrun Returns and Shadowrun Dragonfall, it is possible maybe to get some soft locks like that. As well as that, I did have in the second one, or was it Hong Kong? No, it was Hong Kong, that I was able to find a way to run off the map. I completely run off the map because the map's, I guess, like a pre-rendered background. It's like a environment piece, and you're kind of like running on a painting, if you will. And I was able to just walk off right off the map and everything like that. It was pretty funny. It didn't affect anything. I just ran back. But that's about it. Lots of problems. And thankfully, I'm just a spastic saver, so I had a bunch of backup saves and stuff like that. So it didn't affect me too much. But I could see maybe I got lucky. Maybe it could have been more a headache for other people. As I've always said, bugs can be fickle. Maybe I just had a really bad luck and experienced a bunch of bugs. You could play it and be wondering you didn't experience any of these issues I talked about, or a minor few of them. That's just how games can be sometimes. Bugs can be fickle. So I'm just letting you know what my experience was. But overall, the games, I did like the gameplay combat, and I like how it's like a classic RPG, XCOM kind of layout map where you move your units around and place them in positions, put in cover and stuff like that, and you try to attack and have a percentage of hitting. All really good. You get to create your own character and kind of create your own abilities and stuff like that. But I feel like the game leans heavily in you being a rigger and a hacker, because there's a lot more flexibility between having that as the main character than being any other class, because I was able to contribute so much to the team being a rigger, because I can have 2 drones moving around. That gives me 2 extra people to control around the map. As well as being a hacker, I can do all the special hacking moments in the game that I wouldn't be able to do unless I brought a specific character with me. So it really feels like the game leans heavily you being a rigger hacker. I hope that's what they call it. Next up is that, surprisingly, all 3 of them has a fairly good, decent story and characters. Now, Shadowrun Returns are more of a personal story involving just really the main character, you, and it kind of just doesn't... The other characters are just kind of shoehorned in there and not really a big part of the story. And that's why I feel like the Shadowrun Returns is kind of like a prototype, a basic idea. And then we get to Shadowrun Dragonfall, then you start getting like a whole team involved. They have a select group of people who bring along with you, and they have their own story and have their own side quests and stuff like that. And they kind of continue with that in Shadowrun Hong Kong, and you get more characters and stuff like that to expand upon and more people to switch out. It's all very good, and the main story for all 3 games are fairly good and interesting. Now, keep in mind, this is a very dialogue and reading heavy game. There's a lot of dialogue, lots of reading and stuff like that, and lots of people talking and stuff. There's no voice acting other than Hong Kong, or Shadowrun Hong Kong, which has got special cutscenes with some voice acting in it. But all the rest of the game is all done by reading, which could turn some people off. And that's pretty much it. Personally, I did enjoy it. I did enjoy this game, other than, of course, all the bugs and issues, and I wish they wasn't present. But the overall experience, I did enjoy the games. I put nearly 100 hours between playing all 3 games combined. It was nearly like 95 to 100 hours. Now, it would have been longer, but during Hong Kong, Shadowrun Hong Kong, I kind of was skipping through the text a little bit because I've gotten used... I mean, this is my 3rd game playing through this, and I can tell when things are just being flavor text or just universe building, and I've already know the universe. I already know these kind of mechanics and ideas what's going on, because, as I said, all 3 games are their own standalone games, so they're treated in that way in some ways. So, but overall, disappointing physical copy in terms of the overall experience, but overall gameplay, characters, universe, and stuff like that, all very, very good. Personally, if I had to pick, my favorite would be Shadowrun Dragonfall. I felt like the story was really good, the characters were really good, and the overall flow of the game was really good. But Shadowfall Hong Kong is where the game's mechanics really got flushed out, especially the hacking moment. It's a lot more intricate and a lot more involved. Some people may not like it because it's a little bit more puzzly than actual just running around combat and just hacking and stuff. And then you have where you can like engage in combat prior, because that is a bit of a problem with even throughout all three games, other than the third one, which can remedies a little bit. There's really no ambushing. There's a lot of times where you want to move your characters in positions because you know an event's going to happen, you have to fight, but you can't control the other characters, and it's all free motion. You can't like go into a turn-based moment before activating something. So you'll always find yourself getting attacked first, especially in the first and second game, which can be a little frustrating in that area. The game has its problems, but overall, I am glad I played all three of these games. I'm glad to have this collection. I felt like it was really good. I just wish it wasn't so buggy, but apparently even people talk about the PC version being not the most cleanest version as well. So it's a good physical game if you're interested in these kinds of games, if you're interested in some really good world building. It's like putting together Baldur's Gate 3 with XCOM's gameplay, but as well as like a fantasy setting where you got orcs and stuff like that, and elves and trolls and and dwarfs and humans and stuff like that. But it's got XCOM's gameplay, but it's got kind of the Baldur's Gate 3 kind of characters and universe and relationship building and stuff like that. It's really good. You can tell that it maybe was a bit much for whatever the studio was working on. Maybe a bit more than it could handle, or it's just the console port maybe not the best. But overall, I had fun. The 3 games were enjoyable. Again, I played all 3 of them, so near the end I was getting a little worn down. But I do think this is something you can maybe look into. Depends on how you feel about the physical copy's experience. Your mileage may vary. You could have little to no problems, or you could experience way more worse bugs than what I experienced. But overall, I did beat all 3 of these games, and I did enjoy all 3 of them for what they were. And thankfully, I made many backup saves for every game, so I had little to no issues in terms of when things went a little wonky. So again, thank you all so much for watching. I will try to provide links down in the description if you're interested in a copy. As I said, it is from Limited Run Games, so getting a copy may not be the easiest. I do believe there is a Nintendo Switch version as well as a PS5 version. I don't know what those versions are like. I only have this PS4 version. So again, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next unboxing video. Bye-bye!